Hi, I'm Robert, and this is Experience CTN, where we're going to learn more about CTN's volunteers and producers who have supported community media over the past years. I'm here with Frank Melton, a local community producer. Hi, Frank.
Hi.
Thank you for coming here to speak with us.
That's great. I'm glad to be here.
Great. So you have been a community producer here at CTN since, I think, 1998, is that correct?
1994.
1990?
Well, I've been involved with productions since '94.
Okay.
But my first few were done with another producer. His name was John Thompson.
Okay. So what really prompted you to come on this adventure of television production, and what kind of motivated you to do that?
Well, what motivated me was I was coming back from Arizona, and I was driving through Arizona. I had my way out, and I had these two visions, you know, and one of them was I was coming back to make music and be on cable television.
Cool. So when you had this vision, was it like you saw yourself doing these activities, or was it like a guide, or what was it like?
It was just a vision that I had, you know, and it was just knowledge that I had, and that again, that I was coming back to make music and be on cable television because the people wanted it, you know.
Cool. And then after that, what was the first steps that you took towards that?
Well, actually, it just all fell into place because in 1994, when I got back, I met a gentleman, John Thompson, at a mutual friend. You know, he would stop over at a friend of mine's, and so he pulled me up. Hey, you know, we got a camera all set up, you know, and so we did my first production with him. And then in 1995, we did two productions called Last Connection 1 and Last Connection 2, and that involved, you know, the first one was something that John Thompson had put together. Our part was more or less improvised, but Last Connection Part 2 was completely me and Richard and a friend by the name of Tracy, and she, we did Last Connection Part 2, which was that played an awful lot, and there's a lot of people enjoyed it. And then I borrowed this camera and did Sissy from Singapore, which was more or less an experience that I had with a neighbor that we had at where I used to live. And anyways, and then the last show I did with John Thompson was Call of the Lumbee, and that was you know, that was a cult classic, so to speak. I mean, that's what I was told. You know, it was one that really people really enjoyed, and they still enjoy it. You know, even this long down the road, and then but it got to a point where John Thompson was too busy to produce any shows, and I had, you know, still creativity that I needed to express, and it's a hobby of mine, so it became a hobby, and I learned how to be a producer in the Hotline studio.
Oh, here at CTN, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Great, yeah.
And it was down there on Main Street in Packard at the time, and so what happened was I learned how to use I went through orientation, and we had the whole Iraq war thing that was starting up and everything, and so I had this idea of Acme unincorporated, Acme Uncorporated. Then I came up with that.
And is that your production kind of
it was going to be kind of like a name of you know, who's presenting presenting it, Acme Uncorporated. Then I came up with Acme Uncooperating, and then I read this article about by a gentleman who said he was a friend of Susan Sarandon's. I can't remember his name right now, but he's a famous actor, and he said, "We need you. You know, don't shut up, don't be quiet, we need you, we need you." And so I decided at that point, after reading the article, that I was going to go with Acme Uncooperating regardless of what the Fed said.
Great.
And
And that kind of led you to do the CTN shows. What is it? Space Chatter, and those are other cult classics. Space Chatter and 2012 Guy.
Space Chatter. I did that for several years.
Yeah.
And then I would come in and produce a show every couple months, you know.
Right.
And then I produced a series called Deeply Dead, and that was with Grateful Dead music and stuff. And,
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
I had the skull and lightning bolt, you know, would come in and out on the screen and whatnot. And then let's see, then I got into using my own using a camera and started making commercials and stuff, and I learned how to use the cameras, you know. And
then soon after you did the 2012 Guy, and then
I guess I must have learned the cameras when I was doing Space Chatter at some point.
All right, great.
You know, and then I did these other miscellaneous shows, and then it came around 2010, and the end of 2009, maybe somewhere in 2010. I came up with 2012, you know, because I would listen to this gentleman this announcer who had a radio show, you know, and I thought, well, rather than wait for him to call me, I'm just going to do my own show,
right.
You know. So I did 2012, and this is a hit, you know. This was something that really surprised me. But after a while, people were watching it, and you know, I know one of the questions was what was my favorite high point. I've had so many high points with CTN productions and stuff that I can't really name them all, but one that stands out is the big boss that walks around here. Now, he doesn't have to say hi to anybody. Now, you can say hello to him, but he doesn't have to say hello back. But he came into the studio, and he says to me, do you do Twitter? And I says, well, Lucy Ann taught us how to do it, but I don't do it. He said, well, that's a good way to produce your shows, or have your shows known, you know, to promote your shows. And he says he was driving in his car, and he was listening to the radio, and the person on the radio says, you know, he's going to come home and turn on CTN and watch 2012. So that gives you the kind of idea of the scope of listening audience that you can have, you know, and
well, why don't we take a look at some of these shows here? I mean,
right.
I'd love to, you know, show people what you've done in the past. So why don't we play a couple clips here?
Okay, will it come up on here?
Yeah, it'll come up on here.
All right. Look at me, Mom, I'm on TV! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is 2012. Your cable boxes and computers have microphones in them. Your cell phones, while hung up, are microphones. All cell phone activities are recorded. They can hear us whisper. Cameras everywhere, and soon your money will have RFID technology and will be traceable. The ancient technology. And the ancient technology is working well, and the knobs are turning, and the switches are switching, and the digitals are moving, and the ancient technology is working well. Here we go. It works, ladies and gentlemen. It works. I have become one with the fire of the creator of all things, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I know the meaning of 12-21-12. With all the tornadoes, fires, heat, drought, hurricanes, and war, we are to become one with the consuming fire of the creator of all things. I visit with Ann Arbor, and the police wanting a $500,000 water fountain out in front. It's the biggest setup in the history
of the world.
All about respect. You're lucky, you're all lucky that I don't just do something, you know, out of the blue because of you.
So you mean that this is all about a woman?
Yeah,
Well, how do you know that she will love you?
I don't.
Great. Thanks, Frank. Yeah, I can see from your work here that there's a lot of passion and creativity that go into your projects. Talk to me about what kind of motivated you to, use these alternative, I guess, means to spread your message. Because I know a lot of what you do isn't going to be seen on CNN or 247. Talk to me about some of these, interesting stories that that have motivated you to produce television shows.
Well, you're not going to get these shows, you're not going to get this information on regular shows,
Right.
One of them, I got a show out I produce now, and it's called Wicked Devices. And you're not going to hear this information on 247. You might not hear some of this information for years, okay?
Are you talking about cell phones, or what do you mean by devices?
Well, can I set this up before the
Totally.
devices?
Yeah.
There are people in Ann Arbor that have beast foreheads, okay? And there's actually children with beast foreheads, okay, who have horns that come out of their forehead and they kind of curl around. And they also have, what they're doing is they have these special glasses that they use. And they look like sunglasses, but this is done by security, okay? And they're out there watching everybody. They're trying to turn everybody into these more or less just people who give up on God, give up on Jesus Christ. And they can read the writing on the wall, okay, which means they can read what's been written up on the wall. I call it the wall, but it's up on the sky. So they can read things that have been put up on the sky. And they think they're pretty clever, okay, at this, okay? But it really is something that they can't even comprehend the fact that God created all things for his own pleasure, okay? And then so now getting into the devices that they use, they first wanted to work on child security, so they got devices that help with child security. And then, but I was into a lamp store on Industrial Highway, and I was having my lamp I bought purchasing wrapped up, and I hear this, these witches, right? And so I said, well, I'm going to turn my back on these people on purpose, right? So I turned my back on them, then I looked back and I had like 3 or 4 arms stretched out with devices pointed at me.
Wow. What did you feel? Were you pretty afraid when you saw that?
No, I wasn't. They put them back and withdrew them back into their pockets. But it was something, see, I had been aware of this going on already, but I just wanted to get these guys, actually doing it, okay? And so they have different kinds of devices. They have devices that will just download your memory.
So why would they want to download our memories?
They'll laugh at you. Believe it or not, they want to look at your sex life. Okay, this equipment is some of the best equipment. Great for finding killers, great for finding rapers and murderers and this sort of thing. But they're using it in the most perverse ways.
Just to get their kicks off. Okay.
To get their kicks off it, to laugh at poor people and disabled people. They do this and then just run them out of town. This is a general theme that comes from the poor people and disabled people, is that they go uptown, they get mocked, they get laughed at, and then they get ran out of town. And some of them don't even want to go up there. Some of them force themselves to go up there. They have some that are have judging capabilities. Now I ran out of gas on Washington and Ashley, the hub of occult activity in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I had my door open, the passenger door open, and this woman was sitting at a table, but she points this device at me, looks at it and says, "I forgive you." Okay?
Wow.
And I've been in checking out my food at Kroger's, and this Oriental gentleman walks by, points the device at me, pushes a button, looks at it, and says, "Perfect," he says, and off he goes. And about 10 months after that, I'm going across the street to get into my vehicle, and there's these 4 big machines out there, and around one of them there was 7 or 8 men hanging around one of them. And I started a small conversation with them, and here, can I get a sip of water?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Now, how, you know, you talk about the different devices that people are using. Oh, go ahead, just finish your story.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear the rest of this.
As I was walking to go get in my car, I hear "perfect."
Again,
I turn and I says, "What?" He says, "You're perfect." And I says, "Is that good?" And this other gentleman says, "You don't get no better than perfect." And so they have judging capabilities within these devices.
Well, that must be a good one. I mean, to be judged as being perfect, I mean, it could be
Yeah,
worse,
I
right?
didn't want them pointing it at me,
Yeah, that's true.
you know, because I knew it was coming, because I've been seeing a lot of this stuff, okay? And now they also have these others. They're evil, okay? What they'll do is they have a device that they'll scratch the pad like this, and all they'll do is upset you. And the more you get upset, the more they have an evil grin. And you get upset even more, they're going to get even a more evil grin, okay? And this is what they're doing, and they're doing this to Ann Arbor residents. And I've mentioned this to the police. The police have either know about it or have no interest in even pursuing it, you know, because they can't even comprehend. I mean, how would you find out anyways, as far as how would you prove it? Because I was coming around Washington and Ashley, and I stopped because it was after dark, and this Oriental gentleman had a device pointed at me, and I stopped and I said, "What are you pointing at me?" "Oh, just one of these," he says. Then he proceeded to shoot a laser in my eye. Okay, and so
What happened when he did that?
I took off. I left. You know, and let's see.
Are these devices, are they connected to the beast forehead people, or what is the relationship there, if any?
There could be a connection, but all these devices, along with everything else, including the beast forehead people, are created by God. He created all things for his own pleasure. He created both good and evil. Okay, all this is being set up in order for literally the second coming of Jesus Christ. And so there's a warfare. Now, in my 2012 show, I've done a show on the fact that I forgot where I was headed in this, but I forgot where I was headed.
So is it like this is a second coming, and then these are events and I guess situations to help cause that to happen or facilitate?
Well, Edgar Casey in the early 1900s, I've done a show on how he said that at that time, before 2012, and the time that we're in now, that we are in Armageddon, and we are in a pitched battle between light and darkness, and so the town, really, literally, Ann Arbor, is being run over by literally witches and cults. Okay, a lot of people don't realize this. A lot of people don't understand what exactly they're looking for. What they want you to do is turn over everything you have over to this hell thing.
Okay.
And they got intelligence and stuff, and they're out there watching all this go on. And
so if someone who's watching this, as we kind of begin to wrap up, what would you kind of advise them to do, you know, from your different programs and what you're speaking with us to do about now? What advice would you kind of give them about?
Stick with Jesus Christ, because these people, if you look in 2 Peter and you look in Jude, you find out that these people were created to be destroyed. And they're going to be destroyed by the brightness of Jesus Christ coming, who in the end, he isn't just coming from the sky, he's being born again. And this is something that Jesus Christ had mentioned, that a man must be born again before he can see the kingdom of God. And he was a man, he was also God, but he was also a man. In Revelation 12:5 it says, and she brought forth a man child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. So I would recommend that they stick with Jesus Christ, don't give up on God, because it's really, these are people that were created to be destroyed. And,
Right.
and this is brought up in 2 Peter, I believe it is.
Thank you. Right, great. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate you kind of coming on here and sharing your story with us. I think it's fascinating, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. So
I appreciate it too, and you'll find though that you're never going to hear about this on 247.
Right.
You may hear it, you know, this is why it's important a station like CTN, because you can get information out, and that's why it's important that you guys do what you do.
Great.
all
Thank you,
the
Frank. Yeah.
volunteers.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. All right. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for future episodes. In the meantime, why not come in and experience all we have to offer for yourself? Visit us online at a2gov.org/CTN or follow on Twitter and Facebook at CTN Ann Arbor. I want to thank our crew, Matthew Drake, Gage Shaughnessy, KJ Johnson, Lana Hershenson, Kyle Wagner, Aaron Foster, and Alicia May. And I'm your host, Robert Horn. See you next time.